Welcome to this week's episode of Eye on the Tigers. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Hewling, and this is a big week for Auburn sports because next week volleyball starts their season. So for the first time in a while, we get to talk about 3 sports rather than just 2. Let's get into it. First on our list is soccer. Tuesday, the Auburn Tigers faced off against the Ole Miss Rebels and won in the last 10 seconds of the game that went into double overtime. Andy, this Tiger team showed their effort and their determination and their hard work. And how important do you think this work ethic is going to be when they take on UGA Bulldogs this weekend?
Well, that game was a great start for Auburn, coming back after a long pause from COVID. And I really think the Tigers fought hard, and they deserved that win. Despite the outcome, it was an own goal from an Ole Miss defender in the last 10 seconds off a corner. I think Auburn will be really thrilled with getting the win, maybe a little bit lucky, but I think still they're going to be happy with 3 points and moving on to face Georgia.
They definitely earned that win. Coach Karen Hoppe praised her team in the post-game presser, just talking about how they really deserved it, and Auburn outshot Ole Miss by a lot, and Corey Loxley had her career-high shots on goal, and the aggression, especially in the midfield, was key to this game because even though that score didn't come until the last 10 seconds of the second overtime, they deserved it no less. And even the players post-game really just praise each other and their hard work, and despite not having a full practice in several weeks except for the day before the game, and it only being their second game 25 days after their first game of the season, the Auburn Tigers performed really well, and Coach Karen Hoppe was very verbal about that after the game.
Just really proud of this team. We knew obviously we'd been out for a long time. We hadn't had our whole team except for one practice yesterday, and you couldn't tell in their performance. I thought the overall performance was excellent. We had a lot of chances, and really proud of them to stick with it to the last second and come out with a really valuable 3 points at home.
It was a really hard-fought battle. We've been waiting 25 days to play again. Had that first season opener and didn't exactly get the result we wanted, but today we were going to come out and we fought. We fought for literally 110 minutes. I think it was down to the last 10 seconds. So it really paid off to see that go in and end in a win for us.
It just feels great to get the win. It doesn't matter how it goes in, really. I think we dominated the whole game, so we really deserved it. And we're just glad to be back playing, glad to get.
Now on to volleyball. This year's volleyball season is going to look very different because Auburn hired a new head coach, Brent Crouch. Andy, what do you expect from the volleyball Tigers this year under this new head coach?
Well, obviously Coach Crouch brings in a pedigree coming from USC. They're more of a volleyball school than Auburn has been in the past couple years. And I think there's a lot of excitement on the team. I think Tatum Shipes will be one of the girls to look out for this year. She got SEC Freshman of the Year last season with a really good performance in last year's campaign, despite a lot of the losses they took. So I think Auburn's coming in with a new approach, a new coach who's going to bring them more positivity. So I think the Auburn volleyball will be a team to look out for in the SEC.
I agree. They're going to be a real competitor this year, and Coach Crouch was just talking about how he's bringing a really fast-paced offense, and he's not expecting immediate results, but he's really going to be pushing for those connections and those plays, and it's going to look a lot different from typical other SEC attacks and defenses, and he wants everybody to be attacking, everybody to be defending, and I think it's going to be a completely new look for the season, and it's going to be really fun and interesting to watch. Now on to football. Before we get too much into Auburn's match versus South Carolina, there's been an increasing number of cases of COVID going around the SEC, leading to 2 games being postponed this weekend: Mizzou versus Vanderbilt and LSU versus Florida. Andy, how do these numbers worry you for the rest of the football season?
Well, we obviously have seen it in the NFL in the last couple of weeks with a few games getting pushed back or postponed. And I think the SEC is kind of feeling the effects of that now. And I'm not too concerned for the season being canceled as a whole, but it's definitely going to lead to logistical problems, especially even in the conference standings, as some teams are going to get ahead of others because other teams aren't playing this week. I think about Florida as they're trying to win the SEC East over Georgia. They're not playing this week, so they're maybe going to have to hope that Alabama wins if Georgia, is to play this week, and I think it's going to be a really tough thing for the SEC to deal with, but I think they'll get through it with it. They're just going to have to move some games, but obviously it's concerning because there could have been a lot of teams that could have gotten COVID cases because South Carolina played Vanderbilt, and they could have gotten cases from that, but they released a statement saying that their players were fine and were not in close contact with those on the Vanderbilt team who had it. Obviously with Florida, LSU, Alabama, like Florida has had 19 cases on their team, and then Alabama, Coach Saban and the athletic director have had COVID-19 reported by the Alabama papers. And I think it's going to be, something that the SEC has to watch over, kind of this season. But I think they'll find a way to get through with it.
It is a tough situation, especially because, like you said, head coach Nick Saban came down with it, same with his AD, and they're supposed to have one of their biggest matchups this weekend against UGA, and so he's obviously the mastermind behind the team. He's not going to be there. On top of that, it is going to present a lot of logistical errors, and I think it's a tough situation just because a lot of people are kind of just ignoring the fact that COVID is still a thing. I mean, the Florida governor just announced that stadiums could now be filled to full capacity. And this week, Florida's game got postponed because they had only 50 available players, and per the guidelines, they need at least 53 in order to have that game. And I mean, here at Auburn, on campus, the numbers have been going down, and that's very promising. And knock on wood, in the past few weeks, there haven't been any positive cases for the Tiger football team. But it's just so important to be cautious now more than ever, because as we are getting deeper into the season, when these games are starting to matter more and more, you want to make sure that you can finish your season, and we want to make sure that everybody has ample opportunity to go to the national championship. And it would be awful for a team to not get to play for a trophy they deserve because they had a couple players out, which affected their whole game. So it's just more important now than ever just to be cautious, and so far Auburn and a lot of other SEC teams are doing really good, and these could just be freak accidents, small outbreak. They could have been doing everything right, but that's just part of the unknown with the virus. So hopefully there are no more weekends like this with big postponements, and hopefully both of these teams recover and are healthy and 100% fine after this weekend. But we'll just have to keep an eye on the situation and hope that it doesn't get more out of control like it was in the spring. Now to preview South Carolina versus Auburn. Andy, last week the Arkansas Razorbacks traveled to Jordan-Hare Stadium, and the Tigers barely scraped out a win, questionable play in the end. Based on last week's performance, what did you observe from the Tigers playing the Razorbacks?
Well, I thought the running game was really the key to Auburn's success. I said last week that they have to establish a ground game, and they did just that, over 260 yards, most of it coming from Tank Bigsby, who had an impressive performance. And I thought he was the key to Auburn's success. Also, DJ Williams getting in there and getting about 70 yards on the ground. I thought that was crucial to Auburn's success, establishing the run game in a sloppy environment where they weren't throwing as much. I know Bo was able to get one touchdown pass and had, about 180 yards in the air, but, still the ground game, being able to push through that Arkansas defense was crucial for Auburn's success.
I agree. The running game looked really promising last week, and I know Bo Nix was my player to watch last week, and he left a lot to still be proved on the field. Most likely, the rain played a huge effect, so not blaming that 100% on him, but the rain did give the Tigers opportunity to really put all that effort into the running game. Like you were saying, Tank Bigsby, DJ Williams, stellar games, and Bo Nix in the post-game press conference was quick to praise Tank Bigsby for the true running back that he is.
Makes my job a lot easier when he's running the ball like that, and obviously Tank has been a huge weapon for us the past few weeks, and we're really getting to know how good of a player he really is, and run after run after run, it's like he never goes down, and he's young, he's still got a lot to learn, but the effort, the intensity, and the playmaking ability is definitely there for him.
Since the Tigers got the win, a lot of people are questioning, are they really here? How much do they have left to prove? And I think that this game against South Carolina, it's kind of just a gauging game, and it's going to really tell how the rest of the Tiger season is going to go. Obviously, if it's not a great game, I don't think the Tigers can be written off just yet. But if it is a good game, I think that they'll show that they're still worthy of their ranking. But Andy, what do you think that they need to change or keep consistent and focus on in order to win against the Gamecocks this weekend?
Well, obviously Auburn's struggles have been on the road. I think they really play well in front of the Jordan-Hare Stadium crowd, but on the road, Bo Nix seems like a different person. He seems very off balance, very flustered, and teams like to pressure him. I mean, it's very well known that when Bo gets out of the pocket, he's prone to making mistakes with his arm and even with his legs sometimes, but I think what Bo needs to do is just to stay in the pocket, try to make a play, but if he has to take a sack, take it, because it's honestly better than forcing a turnover or a bad throw. And then also with Auburn's defense, though, I know there were so many injuries last week. There were 8 guys out, a lot of banged up people like Big Cat Bryant, KJ Britt's out for a long period of time, maybe even the season with his right thumb. And I think obviously Auburn was feeling the effects of having those guys out, but still, the defense is still struggling in some areas, especially the passing game. They're not able to get pressure on the quarterback. I thought Felipe Franks in the second half was able to get more passes off. The Tiger defense did get a few sacks early on, but he figured them out, and he knew that he just had to get it off to his wide receivers or even dump plays to his running backs, and he was able to do that, and that's why they took the lead late. So I think Auburn just needs to improve in their pass defense, just keeping, in man coverage, just staying on their guy, or in zone, just making sure that they're watching the quarterback and even just getting to the ball. And I really think it starts with the defensive line, just forcing pressure on the quarterback. They're going to have to get that penetration. Hopefully with Big Cat Bryant back this week, he should be able to lead that defensive line.
I think defense will be key this week. Like you said, Bo Nix on the road is just not the same player, and I think that the defense is going to have to step up and compensate for that. And KJ Britt, like you said, he's out, but the Tigers have done a really good job of just focusing on that next man up mentality. And earlier in the spring and practices when they started over the summer, they were just focusing on getting those younger player reps in case there was a COVID outbreak. And so far, I think that has really helped the Tigers' performance, because even if the players on the field aren't as experienced as the team last year, because really nothing can compare to those star defensive players last year, but they're definitely not clueless. And Owen Pappo, Zacoby McClain, all of those, and hopefully Big Cat Bryant's back this weekend. But I think that defense is really going to be key, but they are struggling to force those third down into fourths, and so I think that they really need to focus on that in order to win this weekend. But Coach Malzahn in his post-game press conference was just praising the overall well-roundedness of the Gamecocks and in their offense, their defense, but he also expressed his hopes for the Tigers' offense and just
when you
how
look
it's
at
been
them,
progressing
they've
through the
got
season.
6 returning starters on offense and defense. Really what stands out to me about their defense is, they're one of the top in the country in total defense. They're third in our league. Their third downs, I think they're first in the league on third down defense, so that's going to present some challenges. And then you look at their offense, the running back Kevin Harris runs extremely hard. The receiver Shi Smith is a very electric, and their quarterback Colin Hill, I'm very impressed with him. He's a big guy that has a real strong arm. So, real solid team. Chad's learning a lot about his guys. He's got 3 games under his belt. And I think just like anything else, I think the offense will have an opportunity to improve each week, not just in red zone, but third down and first down and all that. So, that's the goal.
Now for our weekly players to watch. Andy, who's your Auburn Tiger to watch this weekend?
My player to watch this week is Tank Bigsby. I think he needs to have another good game on the ground. Last week he had 20 carries for 146 yards, and I thought that he just showed a lot of promise in the backfield. I know Sean Shivers has normally been the starter. He's been banged up. DJ Williams has also come in, but I think Tank can really take over the starting role until Sean Shivers gets back. But I really think Tank could be the guy for Auburn. He could be the guy to take over the starting role, and he's just showing a lot of power, a lot of speed. He won't go down on the first tackle. That just shows you his raw strength and how powerful he is. So he will be my player to watch. He's got to have a good game and help the ground game for the Tigers.
My player to watch is Zacoby McClain. The linebacker went off last week. He had a career-high 13 tackles against Arkansas, and I think that shows that he is hungry, he's aggressive, he is just waiting to prove himself. He's definitely following in accord to that next man up mentality and just really proving that he deserves that spot on the field. And like we were talking about earlier, defense is going to be key this game, especially against South Carolina. And so I think that after having such a stellar performance last week, he's going to be looking to build on that. And so I think that he really could be a game changer this weekend. Now for our weekly pick'em segment. First up for college matchups, we have Ole Miss versus Arkansas. Andy, who do you have?
I like Ole Miss in this game. One reason, how many points they scored. Last week, they really torched Alabama's defense. And Arkansas is a good team on the defensive line, but I just think Ole Miss, Matt Corral, and that team on offense is just, they are scoring lights out. And I think even next week, I know we're going to talk about this more in the next show, but they could give Auburn some trouble if Auburn's defense is not ready. So I think Ole Miss will get this win very, very big.
I'm going to have to go with Ole Miss as well, but I think it could be a close game. Both offenses are okay. I mean, Matt Corral's putting up good numbers. He's a dual threat, but Ole Miss's defense is seriously lacking, as was shown in their match last week against Alabama. But I don't think that Arkansas's offense has enough punch to really give them any trouble, so I'm going to have to go with the more consistent offense, and I think Ole Miss is going to win this one. Next up, we have Texas A&M at Mississippi State. Andy, who do you have?
Well, Texas A&M obviously is coming off a massive upset last week against Florida, and I think the biggest key for them is to continue this consistency, because they're a team that, seems to win a big game but then just drop a game right after. And I think that's what's going to happen this week. I don't trust Kellen Mond on the road. I think Mississippi State is bound and determined to get a win after having a pitiful performance against Kentucky last week. And I think the Bulldogs will pull off the maybe minor upset at home to Texas A&M.
I'm going to have to disagree and go with Texas A&M on this one. Mon did show some good potential last week with their win, but I mean, like you said, his road performance could be questionable. But I think that Mike Leach's offense, there's a little too many turnovers in it for me, and so I think that Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher, I think that they're going to win this one, and I could be a close game, but I do think that even though it is away, Texas A&M is going to win this. Next up, we have possibly the biggest game of the weekend, Alabama versus Georgia. Andy, who do you have?
This is going to be a really good game. I look at Georgia's defense being the key for them. They're going to have to stop that Alabama offense, or it's going to be a long night. I just don't think that they're going to do that, so I think Alabama will win, maybe by a little bit closer than expected, but I think they'll win by maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns.
I'm going to have to go with Alabama as well on this. It'll be a really interesting game, though, since Nick Saban will not be on the sideline. And while some coaches are kind of just figureheads there, the OCs and the defensive coordinators, they kind of run the show, Nick Saban's definitely the mastermind. So this will be an interesting matchup, wondering if he'll be there via Zoom on the sideline. But I do think that it's going to be Alabama's offense versus Georgia's defense. And the key for Georgia would be to make Alabama one-dimensional. But because Bama has so many weapons, I don't think it's going to be possible, and I think that the Tide are going to get the win with this. For our final college matchup, we have Auburn versus South Carolina. Andy, who do you have?
Well, obviously this is going to be a huge road trap for Auburn, as they got to go on the road to a hostile environment. They haven't lost to South Carolina in quite a long time, and I think this weekend could be the week that Auburn falls, and I'm going to pick South Carolina to get the upset over Auburn.
I'm going to have to stick with the Tigers on this one. I think that Auburn's going to win South Carolina. I think that they probably are a little affected by the questionable call that ended the Arkansas game last week, and I'm sure they're glad that they won, and a win is a win, especially in a tough SEC schedule, but they're definitely going to be looking to prove themselves and show that they deserve to win that game by even more than the differential showed. And I think that since the running game has showed a lot of potential, that the Tigers are going to lean more on that, and so that's going to take some of the pressure off of Bo and his performance away from Jordan Hare. So I think the Tigers are going to win this one and keep up their winning streak. Now on to the NFL. First matchup is Bears versus Panthers. Andy, who do you have?
I like the Bears in this game. Their defense is playing really well. I thought the Panthers were a little poor last week against the Falcons. I expected them to win by a lot more, but I don't see it happening. I don't think their offense is ready for the Bears defense.
I'm going to have to go with the Panthers in this one. I think that they've done a really good job with possession and shortening the game by making those long, game-changing drives down the field. And while both offenses are kind of mediocre, I think that Carolina's is stronger. And Nick Foles really relies on those short passes, and I don't think that that's going to be enough to get past the Carolina defense. But I do anticipate it being a close game, but I'm still going to have to stick with the Panthers. Next up, we have Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Who do you have?
I like Pittsburgh in this game. I think the Browns are playing really well. This is going to be a huge matchup in the AFC North. Both of these teams are really, really performing well. But I'm going to go with the Steelers in this game because I think they are showing a little bit more promise. I know the Browns are getting a lot better. Baker Mayfield's going to make this a tough game. But I just think that the Browns are just not there yet where the Steelers are.
I'm going to have to bet on the Browns this week. They did a really good job last week. Their passing defense is shutting down Phillip Rivers, and their rushing defense was looking really good too. And while Ben Roethlisberger has seemed to have a new favorite target every week, I think that the Browns defense are really just going to come for him and be aggressive and looking for those sacks. But I also think that the Browns, they've been relying more on their running game, and while it hasn't been super effective, they are persistent, and the persistence eventually leads to success. So even though it may take a while, I think that they're going to get the win. Next up, we have Green Bay versus Tampa Bay. Who do you have?
I think this is going to be a really good game. I think both teams are coming in playing really good football. Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback matchup. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers in this game. I think it'll be a close one. I think the Packers will really have to earn it. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the dynamic playmaker in the end.
I agree. I think the Packers are going to beat the Bucs, and it is going to be a really interesting shootout between two veteran, very talented quarterbacks. And Packers have done a great job of protecting their quarterbacks, so I think that the passing game is going to be key for them in this win, especially because the Buccaneers, Vita Vea, one of their leading defensive players, he got injured last week, so he will not be playing. So I don't think that the Packers O-line will have as much trouble blocking for Rodgers, and I think that's going to be super important in this weekend's matchup. Finally, we have Chiefs versus the Bills. Who do you have?
I like the Chiefs in this game. I know they're coming off a huge loss to the Raiders, but I think the Chiefs will bounce back and win this game. I think Patrick Mahomes is looking to have a better game than last week. It was kind of close at the start, but the Raiders were able to pull away at the end. I think the Chiefs will bounce back and get the win.
I do think the Chiefs are going to bounce back and get the win as well. I think that Kansas City last week, they struggled a little bit, lost to the Raiders. But I think that the key, if the Bills were to have a chance, would be to outscore the Kansas City offense, and I just don't think that's possible, especially after Josh Allen's performance last week. He was very prolific at the beginning of the season, but he kind of just fell flat. And I think that if they can't outscore the Chiefs, then the Chiefs are going to win this one. And I just think that it's going to be an exciting game because it's two teams looking to rebound after tough losses. So definitely a game to watch for this week. Do you agree with our picks? Do you disagree? Do you have another Auburn player to watch? Head on over to our Twitter at EagleEyeTV and tell us what you think. For more sports and news updates, head to our website at eagleeyeauburn.com. That's all we have for you today. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Hewling. Have a great weekend and War Eagle.